Kevin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Toot toot, Tony. Boiler up. It is time to hear a train whistle 5,000 times. Is that better or worse than the Wildcat roar and or the Nittany Lion roar?
Well, I don't think anything is worse than the Nittany Lion roar. Was it Northwestern where it was like, that's a Northwestern first down?
And they may have said that's another Northwestern first down after the first Northwestern first down of the game, and it was like, unless we're counting from last week.
Well, it was like the time at Nebraska when they had all the balloons, and then they released the balloons after a score, and there was no scores, so they just random first down in the third quarter, like let's.
Yeah, I think we're done here.
Yeah, these balloons aren't just they're gonna eventually deflate.
These balloons aren't going to kill wildlife by themselves.
So here it is, a Wednesday evening, post interviews at Ohio State. Not many players tonight, but they gave us some coaches. In fact, we talked to Justin Frye, Larry Johnson, Keenan Bailey, and Brian Hartline. And on the players' side, G. Scott, Kaden Curry, quarterback Kyle McCord. Did I get everybody correct, Tom?
JT Tuimoloau. Yes.
So there you go. A bunch of players, a bunch of coaches, and a great time was had by all. Of course, I think the burning topic of conversation among Brian Hartline and Justin Frye was the running game, just as it was on Tuesday with Ryan Day. And the good news, Tom, is it's all totally fixable. So by this time tomorrow, you should have a fantastic running game at Ohio State.
Yeah, this is a great example of the difference between fixable problems and fixed problems, because I think the problems have been fixable and have been presented as fixable since the beginning of the season, and we're still using the present and or future perfect tense, I think, on that. I think that's it. It's been a while since I took an English class. But
I don't even know what a gerund is.
Yeah, it's not the past tense, and that's the important thing in this context. Yeah, I mean, it's fixable, sure. And what constitutes fixed? At this point, better might be enough.
Yeah. But
the present tense is not good enough, I don't think, to get where they want to get.
No, 60 yards rushing against Maryland is very much unacceptable. Brian Hartline was asked, how's the running game going? Is it good? And how good is it? He said, it's not good enough. And one of the things he did say that I like is you're evaluated when you need it most.
Yeah.
And that is, and throughout life, I'm just going to throw that out for everybody, that you're going to be evaluated when you need it most, especially if you are an offensive lineman or a coach in the coaching a position that is not working out. And Ryan Day and whoever can try to sugarcoat it, but these are as Urban Meyer would say, we're in a results oriented business, and the results are easy for everyone to see. And when you're running for 60 yards against Maryland, obviously you need to find the fix. And it is just it's Justin Frye said it's nothing physical, but he did admit that some scheme, they probably are maybe asking too much of them. They're gonna have to dial back what they're asking, what they're doing. And perhaps there's you try to do it as long as you can, or you hope that they pick it up. And then you're like, well, it's week 5, game 5. Like, okay, so it's not happening. We're going to have to scrap it. We're going to have to do something different.
Well, this sort of works to the old idea of tailoring your system to your talent. And that's true in that, hey, you've got some really good wide receivers in the team, so you probably want to throw the ball a good bit. That's also true in, hey, what are you not great at? Well, you need to probably dial that back. And, maybe you would love to do that. But if that's not working, that's not working. And there was a point in Saturday's game where they had thrown 22 passes for 240 yards or something like that, and they had run it 21 times and had gotten 34 yards. It was not, those are not exact numbers, but it was close. And I know they want to run the ball, and I know they need to run the ball at some point, but you also have to tailor. They have tried a bunch of stuff. It's not like they've been just, it's not like running the ball is just as one monolithic thing. They have tried a bunch of different stuff schematically in the run game. Not a lot of it has worked super well. They found individual isolated things that have worked, but they haven't found, they're not a 3-pitch, 4-pitch pitcher right now. They can get the fastball over maybe, but there's not a lot of other offerings there.
No, and if you're watching, go ahead and throw some questions into the chat. Kevin will get them to us. Super chats are always welcome. Also, now is a great time for anybody out there listening or watching to join BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. for the price, as Tom says, of a lousy chain store pizza, and also, Tom, a good chain store pizza.
Well, and I've also seen it expressed recently as less than 50 cents a day, which when you think about that, you'd kind of be an idiot not to do it.
Imagine eating pizza for just 50 cents a day.
That's once a month. Once a month, you can have a bad pizza for 50 cents a day.
Just
yes.
that one pizza over the course of a month. But, please check out Buckeye Huddle, become a member, and say hello to us there. Go ahead if you got something.
I was going to just continue the thought on, what it means to be able to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when they know you're going to run it, how well do you run it? When they know you're going to pass it, how well do you pass it? And it feels like when they know they're going to pass it, they can still pass it more often than not. When they know they're going to run it, not so much. And, I tweeted this on Saturday, and it was, kind of a joke, but also statistically accurate. Ohio State's better at picking up 2nd and 33 than they are at 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. And it's true. And I don't think that would probably bear out over a much larger sample size, but, that's very obviously a passing situation. They know you're going to throw the ball on 2nd and 30, unless you're just giving up and running a draw play or something. The assumption is you're going to throw it. They threw it, and they picked it up in one try. So, it feels like there's a little more confidence on one half of that equation than the other.
Yeah, I can't recall a time this season where they didn't pick up a 2nd and 33. Mm-hmm. So that probably bears out. Justin Frye talked about they did get back to basics a little bit this week, just getting back to some simpler things. And I really think, you stop asking guys to do stuff they can't, because I think there's enough evidence right now to know that. And somebody asked about, stretch to the boundaries. Like, yeah, but we have done well there with, it has worked at times, and that gets back to the consistency. And it's always one thing that derails you. I still don't think I think it's more than one thing, because you can look across the line on any given snap and you're going to see, probably more than one bad hand placement or bad step or a slip. There is a lot of slipping on the offensive line that I've noticed, but it's the confidence is still completely there. And this is Ohio State. So if you've got a position that you're not confident in, maybe go back to 2020 in the secondary. Like you could tell, like there's concern there. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that level of concern here about this. Maybe in the spring a little with the offensive line, but like the confidence is there. But the depth right now, the twos aren't pushing the ones at this point, and so you can't. It's these five. It's right or die with these five, unless somebody goes down with something.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about the offensive line in fall camp, and they hadn't really changed anything. They sort of came into fall camp with like it could be any of these mix of guys, and then you got a week or two into fall camp, and it was still the same guys who were starting. We kind of went, okay, so they've clearly found what they wanted. And it feels like that might have been more of a statement on the second team offensive line than the first team offensive line at that point. And without getting to watch a lot of practice in the fall, you're just sort of guessing and interpreting, and you can get told things, and it's, sometimes you're getting told what they want to think. And, sometimes maybe you don't always know before the rubber meets the road and in a real game, but that's a little bit concerning that there's not, there is no cavalry coming to save the day. It is, they got to figure it out. And, schematic changes will probably help, and you're sort of getting into what if you can just do a couple things well, that might be all they need to do, because they have they have a defense that can not entirely carry the team, but carry the team enough that if they're passing the ball well and they're running the ball just a little bit okay enough to keep the defense honest, that might be enough for them. Boy, we are it is another day of yes.
That's not a donut. This is a donut.
Yes, I'm not even. I was going to say cranky, Tony, but I'm not going to. Yeah, it is. It feels like they don't need to get that much better, but they've got to get better. That has to get better, and it. It doesn't need to get better for them to win this weekend, but it might need to get better for them to win next weekend.
Yeah, you're gonna. If it doesn't get better, you're looking at some trestle ball win, like not in that same vein, but in terms of painful defensive, any play could lose it for you type of games against Penn State, and you hope you could have that same kind of game against Michigan if you can't run the ball. Because if you can't run the ball, the road obviously is not going to be easy, and it's the expected pass is not the way to win. But you're not just going to scrap everything now and be like, okay, well, we know we're not going to be able to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And last time you blame Jesse Mirko for this.
No, you blame Jesse Mirko.
Well, I just put 2 and 2 together.
I could never. I merely.
This is what happens when you have 2 Australians on a team, by the way.
It is, yes, because there's Joe McIntyre.
Joey McIntyre from New Kids on the Block.
Yes, they are hanging tough out there in the parking lot, and yeah, I'm going to suspect it is not either of the Australians, but
probably anyway, Canadians,
almost certainly. Anyway, so let's talk about literally anything else. How about Kaden Curry? Can we talk about Kaden Curry? Because I think the exact quote from Brian Hartline is Kaden Curry is awesome. And talked about how, it was like, okay, so how did you figure out that the guy in the defensive end room was going to be your answer at fullback? And he said, everything he does defensively, he does on offense. He's tough. He's physical. He's a joy to be around. He said they looked at his high school film, and he did some of this stuff in high school, and just knowing the athlete and the individual, it was kind of like, well, if he did it in high school, maybe he can do it here.
He said he has been pushing for this since he got here. And then he paraphrased Kevin Noon's favorite line from Silence of the Lambs when he said, "I'd give it to me."
I've never used
that. Tony, let's talk about the PLS in the parking lot. Here's Josh Ricketts lost his black stripe, defensive end out of Indiana.
Yes,
and true freshman. So only true freshman defensive end in this class. So that's that's
Arvell Reese.
Well, Arvell Reese is
now
a linebacker / defensive end / whatever.
So that was good. This
good.
Is the time of year where a lot of the summer guys started losing them.
Yep. Brian Hartline was asked about his transition to offensive coordinator, just sort of how that's going, because it's still, if you noticed on the graphic on the broadcast, Ryan Day is still listed as the play caller for Ohio State. So, it has not fully gone through. The transaction has not fully processed through the bank. Brian Hartline said it's a little like being a dad, where beforehand you're like, yeah, I'm ready for this. And then it happens and it's like, oh. But then every day you get a little better. You're a little more prepared and you're never until you do it, you never quite know, I think, if how well you're going to do it. But he said he's just sort of feeling a little more comfortable. And this is a relatively, I guess this is not the most difficult way you could have to take over as a play caller, because he can kind of take over when they're ready for that transition. It's like you sell your house, but you've already bought your new house and you haven't sold your old house yet, there's a period of transition there where you don't have to move it all in one day. You can kind of move stuff a carload at a time, and it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off. And it's not just crazy deadline pressure all the time. It seems like it's a little like that maybe for him, where it's just you're taking on more responsibility. You're taking another carload of stuff over to the new place every day, and eventually it's like, oh, we're pretty much moved in.
Well, and how we know that it's less pressure is because nobody is blaming him for the lack of the running game. Mm-hmm. Like, he is still viewed as, can't miss, the guy who recruits 5-star wide receivers, and other teams, other schools want him to be their assistant coach and their offensive coordinator. But when you've got an offense that is struggling like this, he is untouchable in terms of the blame. And obviously, as you said, Ryan Day is the play caller, and so much of this offense is just him, and it's always been him. It will always be him. So it's a great way to ease into the system in a program that is scoring 45 points a game before you took over the job as offensive coordinator, and now is scoring 10 fewer points per game. But it's not his fault.
Right. It's not his fault, and it's not. Eventually the mantle will be handed over, and then the first time they punt, it will be his fault. But
it should be.
Yeah, I mean,
how dare you?
Yeah, so far so good on that front. Larry Johnson, got to talk to him. I always love talking to Larry Johnson. It's like talking to your, it feels like if you're having problems in your life, you go to Larry Johnson and he'd sit you down and pat you on the knee and talk you through it. It's just he's got that very like grandfatherly vibe to him. He was talking about JT Tuimoloau being a moment guy where, you know, you don't know when it's going to happen, but it's like there's going to be a big moment, and that's going to be the JT Tuimoloau play. And, you know, he's just – and he's right. I mean, that's – you think through some of the biggest moments of these last couple of games when it's like, man, Ohio State really needs a play, and then there's JT Tuimoloau. You know, it was interesting. He was asked about how they ended up with Tuimoloau and Sawyer playing every snap against Notre Dame, and he said that was a function of the fact they only had 25 snaps in the first half. So you only have 25 snaps in the first half. It's not hard to play that many snaps. And then he said he just talked to them on the sideline, and you know, later in the game, and they said they were good. And he's at the point where he's known them long enough. They've known him long enough that he can trust them. You kind of know, you know what you can see guys maybe losing their technique a little bit, whatever it is. But he said, that he asked, they said they were good to go. So they were good to go.
Being the moment guy reminds me of the Simpsons episode where the Yakuza is fighting the mafia, and Homer he sees the little guy, like the guy over there. He's like, I
know he's going to do something cool.
Yeah. And that's JT Tuimoloau. You know, he's going to do something cool towards the end of the game, a big moment. And that's what he does. And that's, you just expect that. And Buckeye fans are hoping they don't need to see it this weekend at Purdue, but crazier things have happened there.
Maybe the moment comes in the first quarter. That wouldn't be so bad if it happens in the first quarter.
Let's see, Kyle McCord, talking to him, I asked him, does something change for you over the course of the game that where you struggle in the first quarter, not struggle, but where things pick up, in the second, third, and fourth? And he said basically the last game against Maryland, they were just very choppy, getting penalties and putting them behind the sticks. And he needs to do better on 1st and 10. I agree. Everybody needs to do better on 1st and 2nd down rather, and make that keep them out of a 3rd and 10 where everybody then knows they're passing and they drop 8, and it's really, really tough to get 10 yards on that. And you throw short because you just the clock in your head is telling you need to get rid of the ball. And so you throw it to Marvin Harrison for 7 yards instead of 10 yards or whatever. So, that aspect of just a faster start and getting the rhythm there better. I did like how he says, the 2 throws to Marvin Harrison in the red zone. Ryan Day said this week that was the most confident he's seen Kyle McCord, and McCord agreed. And he said the thing down in the red zone is nobody's really open down there. So you've got to get a good pre-snap read, and when that matches the post-snap read, like then the confidence shoots up. And so that's where his confidence was in those plays there. And you saw that was just that was almost like a blank you to the refs on that throw, like I'll show you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, and poor Marvin had lost a couple touchdowns already to penalty calls already in the season. So yeah, it was nice a little cathartic for him to get that one. But just to spell this out a little bit more in case people are wondering why isn't anyone open in the red zone. That's not a function of the receivers aren't any good. That's a function of the field being so compressed. All of a sudden, if you're down at the 12-yard line, you don't have any safeties taking. Dropping 25 yards back because they would be behind the goalpost. You have only a limited amount of space on the field, and everyone's a little closer to the ball. There's a little less space to work with between guys if it's in a zone, or a little less room. If someone gets open on a road route, there's someone a little closer. So yeah, that's the reason behind that.
I'm assuming people have maybe asked about Emeka Egbuka. No update there. Brian Hartline
he said, and I quote, "It's a secret."
Now, what did he say when he was asked, so who would be the next guy in? That
also, Tony, is a secret. He was, however, immediately after that, asked about Xavier Johnson and talked about the fact that, it would be, could be, he can do it all, provides the ability to switch, playing slot or outside. Everything he does is excellent. And then I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but it sounds like, if they don't have Emeka Egbuka, you might see more Xavier Johnson on Saturday.
Is there some irony that the guy named X is not a secret?
That's
think about that, Tom. Carnell Tate was a topic for Brian Hartline and Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord's quote on Carnell Tate. Let's see. Carnell's been ready since he got here. He's going to be scary good.
Yeah, and Brian Hartline was asked if he's ready for a bigger role, and my notes, I didn't quite write the exact quote, was sounds like he's better for a bigger role. So, I think it feels like they feel pretty good about their two deep, which would be six receivers. Xavier Johnson, Carnell Tate, very clearly both in that group. And I think that, he was asked about not rotating more. And he said, they don't rotate the left tackle. They don't rotate the right tackle. They don't rotate, you don't rotate your quarterback. They have rotated guys in the past, but you got to have your best players out on the field. And if you've got Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming, I think the argument is you should be rotating less. You should be running less 12 personnel and keeping Julian Fleming on the field more, maybe. I mean, that's because those are probably your three best receiving threats, and Julian Fleming blocks just fine. I mean, this is not someone you got to get off the field because he can't run block. I mean, I think, if anything, you should be playing the top three guys more, not less. But, they're comfortable with those guys. If someone is hurt and isn't able to play, hypothetically, let's say this Saturday against Purdue, they're confident in the other guys they got to roll out their net.
Yeah, it just comes down to something that we've heard from assistant coaches for years, that you're not going to put somebody who is a lesser player out there. So it comes down to Marvin Harrison at 80% versus, Carnell Tate at 100%. Like, at what level is Marvin Harrison equal to a 100% Carnell Tate? And it's, you're going to go a ways, just despite what Marvin Harrison has said in the past.
We talk a lot about the freshman awakening during the spring, and the guys who get to Ohio State and everyone's the best player in their county, and then get to Ohio State and it's like, oh, there's everyone here was the best player in their county. I bet the answer to the what percentage of Marvin Harrison would you get down to before you substitute, not picking on any particular receiver, but anyone outside of the top three, the percentage I think would be upsettingly low probably to some of those guys.
Yeah, certainly. Kevin, do we have any questions?
We do. We'll have to kind of power through.
Yes.
LC Zamo, I heard Kyle take some responsibility for the bad run game.
Well, I wasn't over there for that, so I'm going to call Sue a liar. No. The quarterback is going to take responsibility for a lot of stuff.
Right,
and pointing out the protections and things like that. And, he is a leader of this team, so he's going to take responsibility for a lot of things, and he's going to pass the accolades on to other people as well. That's what you want from a captain who isn't necessarily a captain. If he is taking responsibility for that, and I believe what he said. I believe I'm not casting aspersions at Sue, but that is also something that will get better the more he plays and as the season goes on. So there's some optimism there as well.
Next one here. It's just me, Tim. Is it so too early for jailbreak screens?
Is it ever too early for jailbreak screens?
Well, they tried it on the goal line essentially.
Right, yeah.
And the defense was ready for it, surprisingly, to Ryan Day.
Yeah, well, and that's something that I guess you're more likely to get a zero blitz there, where you're not as worried about getting it thrown over your head. But again, you've got a lot more defenders compressed in that one area, so you don't have as much, room for them to, as much room to work with the backs, the back seven defenders, getting more depth.
I remember Brian Hartline scoring on a screen down inside the 10 one time, and it was maybe like the first time I've ever seen a wide receiver screen work at Ohio State, because the screens outside of the Walt Harris era at Ohio State have not always been that great.
Brian Hartline was asked about, speaking of Brian Hartline playing days, asked about his memories of playing at Purdue, and he remembered the locker rooms as luxurious and well situated. Sarcasm level. The sarcasm detector exploded on that one. And he talked about, I think he had a long reception but didn't score at Purdue whenever they were playing there.
Rick S., is there a point where they start using G. Scott as a receiving tight end, or do you think that they should go with a wide receiver in his place?
Should they start using G. Scott more as a receiving tight end, or go with the wide receiver in his place? And I would love to see them use him more downfield as a receiving option, but Kate Stover is doing really well at that job as well. No, I still think more 11 personnel, more 3 receiver sets is perhaps what we're going to see. You talked with Ross Fulton about how so much of the 12 personnel, the 2 tight ends was an answer to what Maryland was doing defensively.
Yeah, and I don't think that's something you're necessarily going to see as a consistent thing throughout the year. I still feel like I don't think G. Scott's going to be a consistent receiving threat for this team necessarily. I don't think he has 20 receptions this season or anything like that, but it feels like there is going to be there's always a moment in a close game where you break out the roll right, throw left to the guy who's just, is blocking, and then releases, and you've saved it all year, and then you use it. G. Scott touchdown against Penn State in the third quarter of a close game, something like that. I feel like you're more likely to see something like that in a big moment than he turns into this consistent receiving threat for this year's team.
I mean, I keep waiting. I've had him scoring touchdowns in the last two bowl prediction contests.
This is your version of 220, where as soon as I pick it, it's going to happen.
Well, there was, I don't know if it was the Notre Dame game, but like he had his man beat down the seam, and it's like we don't get to see enough of that. That's what everybody envisioned when he made the switch. Oh, he's going to be a downfield guy, and that has not developed yet. I think the blocking has gotten better and better, and they feel completely confident in him. But that seems to be the next step with him is now let's use him in the passing game, because the only reason to move a receiver to tight end is because that can give you an advantage.
Well, he has another year, right?
Yes.
Well, okay, so maybe that's the 2024 is the year of the tight end from Washington, because it feels like they have their year of the tight end this year already, and so Cade Stover's going after this year, so then it becomes the G. Scott show. That's my personal prediction. Touchdown in a big moment this year, and then next year he becomes maybe more the main guy.
Jeff Straley, thoughts of moving Jack Sawyer inside the defensive tackle?
I mean, you'd have to bulk him up quite a bit, right? I mean,
you'd have to put. I don't think you do it this year.
No.
That's something where you're in technically a contract here. I don't know that he would want to do that. I don't know that they have a problem with how well he's playing this year either. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Larry Johnson talked about that or was even asked about that. That when we talk to Coach, when we talk to Jim Knowles, they're all good. They tell us they're good.
Well, but
he's playing constantly.
It's easy to say it. But when they're playing on the road at Notre Dame and he's playing every snap, that's you're not just saying it. If JT Tuimoloau is playing 100% of the snaps there, and Jack Sawyer is playing 60 and they're rotating, Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson in for Jack Sawyer, but not for, that tells me one thing. JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer playing every snap in the biggest game of the year so far, that tells me something else.
Like when Ryan Day said he was looking forward to watching Mayan Williams play this past week, and he, carried the ball 3 or 4 times in the fourth quarter. You said one thing and you did another.
Yep.
3 more, unless we get a super chat. Brian DeGroff, with OSU having at least 3 offensive linemen coming in through recruiting, how many do you think they try to bring in through the portal?
I think you can't not go to the portal. You can't not look at the portal. No, there's no harm in browsing, and if you see something you like, I'm not into the impulse shopping. I think that's maybe what they did this year. I think this is not about enticements, Tom. This is about seeing if there's a good cultural fit. And if there is, then pay that man some money.
Which dating app do you use to find offensive linemen? Because tight ends are obviously farmers only.
Right,
but where do you find your offensive linemen?
Well, we're gonna have to workshop that one because everything I'm gonna say right now is gonna be way too inappropriate for the show.
What's it like working with someone as quick-witted as Tony? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Next question.
You're the one who asked.
Yes.
But you gave the answer of farmers.
Mike Smith, the short yardage and offensive line issues. I don't buy that it's bad players. Lesser talent has much more success week in and week out. This is bigger than the 5 guys on the line of scrimmage.
I think that's a really good point, that lesser talent has been able to have success everywhere else. That's why I go back to if you have a bad offense, it's on purpose, because you see places like Northwestern having a very good offense in the past, not recently, but they have been able to do that. And other schools have been able to use the spread to equalize things, to put up points and to move the ball and do it in many different ways. And so, that's a good point. Justin Frye admitted scheme has been somewhat of an issue at this point, but you can also watch the players not doing everything that you'd ask them, to do correctly.
Well, this is not a team that has five stars across the deck. And, having 5 stars across the deck does not always guarantee perfect success. Offensive line is such a developmental position that there might be some of the least correlation between recruiting rankings and performance there. But they also that has been an area where there have been years where they've had, hey, here's the top guys on the board, and then they don't hit on many or all of them. And I do think, I think a lot of people are looking at this and going, Justin Frye's fault. And it's such a developmental position. I think this is the last year you can kind of point to some of the misses under Stud and go, that might be part of it. Next year, you've got to kind of sink or swim on your own. But
the depth in that room that Justin Frye is dealing with, you've got a lot of guys, as we've said over the last year or two, that are never going to play here. Like you've got, and so some of those guys have departed, but until you get to the point where more than half of your guys are capable of playing here, and I'd have to go down the list and see exactly what that number is, what that percentage is, but that percentage needs to get up because as we said earlier in the show, the second team is not pushing the first team right now, and some of this first team, you win the job, but how much of this has been won by default? Well,
and you got a lot of third and fourth year guys who are either not contributing and not even in the too deep necessarily, or who are elsewhere, and that's those are guys with offensive line being a developmental position. It's not impossible to play your first year, but it's close enough to impossible that you can certainly see it from there. And your second year, you're playing if there's no one else who's good enough, and that's where Carson Hinsman is. You really shouldn't probably be starting at Ohio State as a second-year player either. It's a testament to Carson Hinsman that he is, but it's also a testament to the other guys that aren't on campus right now that he is. It should be those third and fourth year guys, and you may even have a fifth year guy here and there, but you've got third and fourth and fifth year guys who are still here that aren't contributing, and there've been plenty of them who've left as well. And you're going to have misses in the offensive line room, but you hit a point where it's like, that's too many misses.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to look. I wonder when the last time Ohio State lost two offensive linemen after 3 years to the NFL. I don't know if it's ever happened.
I can't remember off the top of my head. And, you look at how different would this line be if Luke Whippler had come back as expected. He has not had the rookie season that Paris Johnson leaving early. Yeah, absolutely. Look where he get drafted. Look how he's playing. Absolutely. DeJuan Jones seems like he's been a positive impact player for the Browns. Was a second round pick? That's absolutely go. Yeah, you put Luke Whippler on this team, I wonder how different things look in the middle of that line.
Yeah, I think DeJuan was a fourth or fifth round, and
was
Luke
he
Whippler was like a sixth, right?
Yeah, DeJuan slipped.
He slipped.
He didn't do a lot of the workouts at the combine, and there were some work ethic questions and that.
Okay. Speaking of questions, last question,
barring a super chat from Aggie, I guess. It will be bowl season, and we'll be talking about the short yardage disaster. When do we accept that it's not happening and start doing what works?
Well, and that's kind of what we talked about earlier in terms of the scheme changing, and we've tried this for 5 weeks and it's not working. So now we're going to remove that, just cut that out of the offense. And as Justin Frye said, well, what works? I mean, keeping your running back healthy works.
I see a guy catching balls out of the Monarch machine down there. That might be it.
Marvin Harrison
just
works.
A thought.
Yeah, I think. In terms of what works, the coaches know what works. Do more of that, and that's obviously the defense the opposing defense will know that as well. But you should still be able to do what you do well against what other people are expecting, and they can't just sell out to stop one thing against Ohio State, or else this has gone horribly wrong for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and if they sell out to stop one thing, you have to be able to do the other. If they're doing the functional equivalent of running punt block in a goal line situation, like in the old NCAA video game, you got to be able to have a counter to that. And if they're putting two guys out there against Marvin and two guys out there against Emeka in short yardage, well, you better be able to run the ball between the tackles. You have to have a counter punch to whatever the other team is doing. And if they're overdoing it, Ohio State last year selling out to stop the run at the end of the Michigan game, and then boom, they popped the long one. And they hit them over the top with the pass when they were doing that. You have to have the counter punch. If you do, you hit a bunch of big plays off of it. If you don't, you are, bowl season is not going to happen in the places that Ohio State fans want it to happen.
No, it won't. So that will do it from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Thank you all for joining us as always. And as I said during at the start of the show, now is a fantastic time to join BuckeyeHuddle.com. It's a great way to support us in what we do here. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube at live, go ahead and hit that thumbs up if you have not done that yet. If you have, thank you very much. If you're not subscribed to the channel, now is a great time to do that as well. And, of course, hit the bell to be notified whenever we go live like this on Thursday nights and every other day. Oh, but before we go, Kevin.
Not just a chat.
That's a super chat.
It is a super chat. Mike Smith, does Pace have any eligibility left? LOL.
Does
Make sure to like the stream and subscribe to Buckeye Huddle for great content.
The answer, excitingly, is yes. It is Jalen Pace. It is the son of Orlando Pace, and also Landon Pace, also a son of Orlando Pace, a 2025, I believe, tight end, has holds an Ohio State offer. So Pace could have multiple years of eligibility moving forward.
The odometer on eligibility should reset at some point, like maybe when you hit 40 or something like that. Orlando, well, how many snaps do you think Orlando could give them? Good snaps right now, say in the first drive. Could he stay out there the entire drive?
Okay, Orlando Pace was smart enough to hold out of training camp every year. Do you think Orlando Pace, we talked about the facilities at Purdue, do you think Orlando Pace is, I think you got to wait till it's a home game. I don't think Orlando Pace is going to be, I'm sure he still loves the Buckeyes, and I'm sure he still loves the program, and of course loves his children. But I don't know. I don't know if ever anyone loves their kids enough to go
Haven't you seen
volunteer
the
for that.
commercial with Emmitt Smith and with Randy Moss and some other NFL players who are like, I can go back and play, and then they fall asleep like on the sideline, and they're like, I'm good right here at the couch.
Yes. Don't put any recliners on the sidelines, and I think you'll be okay. So thank you for that super chat. And again, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.